Watch your nieces or start paying full rent. You get a discount. Market price is $1,700. My mother stood in the kitchen doorway with her arms crossed, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. My father nodded beside her, his face set in that stern expression he wore whenever he wanted to intimidate me into compliance. Behind them, my sister Chloe leaned against the counter with a smug smile, bouncing her youngest daughter on her hip like she was posing for a parenting magazine. I stood there, frozen, my backpack still slung over one shoulder, textbooks weighing me down like anchors. I had just walked in from my shift at the campus bookstore, exhausted and starving, and this was the greeting I received. My name is Ellie. I am 23 years old, and I live in Kansas City, Missouri. Well, I lived there, in my parents' house, or at least I did until that moment when everything became crystal clear. I had been juggling college classes, working part-time, and somehow became the default babysitter for my sister's 2 daughters without ever agreeing to it. It started small. Can you watch them for an hour? Can you pick them up from daycare? Can you help with bedtime? But over the past year, those small requests had snowballed into full days, overnight stays, and entire weekends where I was the only one responsible for 2 girls under the age of 5. And my sister? She did nothing, absolutely nothing. Chloe was 28, married to a man named Gregory who worked in sales and traveled constantly. She stayed home with the girls, or at least that was the story she told everyone. In reality, she spent her days scrolling through social media, getting her nails done, and meeting friends for brunch while I shouldered the actual childcare. My parents praised her endlessly. Poor Chloe, so overwhelmed. Poor Chloe, doing her best. Poor Chloe, raising 2 kids practically alone. Meanwhile, I was invisible. I paid rent, not the full market rate my mother just quoted. But I paid $800 a month to live in a small bedroom with a squeaky bed and a closet that barely fit my clothes. I bought my own groceries, did my own laundry, and stayed out of everyone's way. I thought that was enough. I thought I was pulling my weight. But apparently I was wrong. Are you listening to me? My mother's voice snapped me back to the present. I blinked, realizing I had zoned out. I heard you. Good. Then you understand the situation. Either you help your sister with the girls, or you pay what everyone else would pay to live here. It's only fair. Fair. That word tasted bitter in my mouth. I already pay rent, I said quietly, trying to keep my voice steady. I've been paying rent for 2 years. A discounted rent, my father interjected. You're getting a deal, Ellie. If you lived anywhere else, you'd be paying at least $1,700 for a room this size in this neighborhood. That wasn't true. I had looked at apartments. I knew the going rates, but arguing felt pointless. Chloe shifted her daughter to her other hip and sighed dramatically. Honestly, Ellie, I don't see why this is such a big deal. You're young. You have so much energy. I'm exhausted all the time, and I could really use the help. It's family. We're supposed to help each other. I stared at her, searching for any hint of self-awareness, but there was none. She genuinely believed she was the victim in this scenario. I have classes, I said, and work. I can't just drop everything to babysit, then drop work, my mother said, as if it were the most logical solution in the world. You don't need a job. You're living at home. We're supporting you. Supporting me. The words echoed in my head, hollow and false. They weren't supporting me. They were trapping me. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw my backpack on the floor and tell them exactly what I thought of their so-called fairness. But instead, I swallowed my anger and forced a neutral expression onto my face. I'll think about it, I said. My mother frowned. There's nothing to think about, Ellie. You need to make a decision by the end of the week. Either you help Chloe with the girls, or you pay full rent. Those are your options. I nodded slowly, then turned and walked upstairs to my room. My hands were shaking as I closed the door behind me. I dropped my backpack on the floor and sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the wall. This wasn't the first time my parents had prioritized Chloe over me. It had been happening my whole life. She was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. And I was the afterthought, the one expected to sacrifice everything without complaint. But this felt different. This felt like a breaking point. As I sat there in the dim light of my cramped room, a thought began to take shape in my mind. a dangerous, thrilling thought. What if I just left? The thought lingered with me through the rest of the evening and into the next morning. What if I just left? It sounded so simple, almost naive. But the more I turned it over in my mind, the more it felt like the only real option I had. I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling and replaying every moment that had led me here. It wasn't just the ultimatum my parents had delivered. It was the accumulation of years of being overlooked, undervalued, and used. Growing up, Chloe had always been the favorite. She was bubbly and outgoing, the kind of daughter who made friends easily and charmed adults without trying. I was quieter, more reserved. I preferred books to parties. Studying to socializing. My parents never seemed to know what to do with me when Chloe graduated high school. They threw her a massive party and gave her a car when I auditioned. Graduated, they took me to dinner at a chain restaurant and told me I should be grateful when Chloe got married at 24. They paid for the entire wedding. It was lavish, expensive, and everything she wanted. When I mentioned wanting to study abroad during college, they told me it was too expensive and not worth the investment. And now Chloe had 2 daughters, and my parents treated her like a saint for simply existing as a mother. Never mind that I was the one who actually took care of those girls half the time. I thought about the past year, about all the times I'd rearranged my schedule to accommodate Chloe's needs. I had missed study groups, skipped social events, and turned down extra shifts at work because I was expected to be available whenever she needed me. And what did I get in return? Nothing. Not even a thank you. I remembered one particular evening a few months ago. I had an important exam the next morning, and I was in my room trying to study when Chloe knocked on my door. "Hey, can you watch the girls tonight? Gregory and I have dinner reservations." I stared at her stunned. "Chloe, I have an exam tomorrow. I really need to study." She waved a hand dismissively. "You'll be fine. You're smart. You'll pass. Come on, Ellie. I never get to go out anymore." I wanted to say no. I wanted to stand my ground. But she stood there with that pleading look on her face. And I caved. I watched the girls that night. I barely slept. I took the exam exhausted and ended up with a lower grade than I had hoped for. Chloe never even asked how it went. That was the pattern. She took, and I gave, and no one ever questioned it. The next morning, I woke up early and went for a walk. I needed to clear my head, to think through my options logically. I wandered through the quiet streets of my neighborhood, past rows of identical houses with manicured lawns and 2-car garages. This was the life my parents valued: stability, conformity, keeping up appearances. But it wasn't the life I wanted. I stopped at a small park and sat on a bench watching a group of kids play on the swings. I thought about my nieces, about how much I loved them despite everything. They were sweet, innocent, and deserved better than to be used as bargaining chips. But loving them didn't mean I had to sacrifice my entire future for them. I pulled out my phone and started searching for apartments. I had done this before, half-heartedly, always talking myself out of it because it seemed too risky. But this time felt different. This time I was serious. I scrolled through listings, filtering by price and location. Most places were out of my budget, but there were a few possibilities. Tiny studios and neighborhoods I didn't know. Shared apartments with strangers. Places that weren't perfect but were mine. One listing caught my eye. It was a small studio in a building near campus. The rent was manageable if I picked up more hours at work. The photo showed a cramped but clean space with a kitchenette and a bathroom. It wasn't much, but it was available immediately. I saved the listing and kept scrolling, but my mind kept coming back to that studio. It felt like a lifeline. When I got home, the house was in chaos. My nieces were running around the living room, screaming at the top of their lungs. Chloe was on the couch, staring at her phone, completely unbothered by the noise. "Ellie," she called out when she saw me. "Can you make them lunch? I'm exhausted." I looked at her, sitting there in her pajamas at noon, and something inside me snapped, not visibly. I didn't yell or storm off. But internally, I felt a shift, a quiet, resolute decision. "Sure," I said, my voice calm. I made the girls sandwiches and sat with them while they ate. They were sweet kids, chattering about their favorite cartoons and asking me to play with them. I smiled and nodded, but my mind was elsewhere. That evening, after everyone had gone to bed, I sat at my desk and filled out the application for the studio apartment. I attached proof of income, references, and a brief explanation of why I needed the place. I hesitated before hitting submit, my finger hovering over the button. This was it. Once I sent this, there was no going back. I took a deep breath and clicked submit. The next few days passed in a blur. I went to class, worked my shifts, and avoided my family as much as possible. Every time my mother brought up the ultimatum, I gave vague, non-committal answers. I needed time. I needed to figure things out. Then, 3 days later, I got an email. The landlord wanted to meet me. My heart raced as I read the message. This was real. This was happening. I scheduled a viewing for the next afternoon, telling my parents I had a study group. The studio was even smaller in person than it had looked in the photos, but it was clean and quiet. The landlord, a middle-aged woman named Dorothy, seemed kind and understanding when I explained my situation. "I can move in next week," I said, trying to keep the desperation out of my voice. She smiled. "I'll send you the lease tonight." I signed it that same evening. The week that followed was the strangest of my life. On the surface, everything appeared normal. I went to class, worked my shifts, watched my nieces when Chloe demanded it, but underneath I was planning my escape. I started packing in secret. Late at night, after everyone had gone to bed, I would quietly pull clothes from my closet and fold them into boxes I had hidden under my bed. I sorted through my belongings, deciding what to take and what to leave behind. I didn't have much. Most of my furniture belonged to my parents, and I didn't care enough to fight for it. I withdrew money from my savings account in small increments, careful not to raise suspicion. I researched moving companies and found one that would come during the day when my family was out. I lined up extra shifts at work to cover the deposit and first month's rent. Every step felt like a small rebellion, a quiet assertion of my independence. But the hardest part was pretending everything was fine. I had to sit through family dinners listening to Chloe complain about how hard her life was while my mother cooed sympathetically. I had to smile and nod when my father lectured me about responsibility and gratitude. I had to watch my nieces and act like nothing was wrong. It was exhausting, but I kept my eyes on the goal. One more week. Just one more week. On Thursday evening, my parents cornered me in the kitchen. My mother folded her arms and fixed me with a stern look. "Ellie, we need your decision. Are you going to help Chloe with the girls, or are you paying full rent?" I took a deep breath, my heart pounding. "I need a little more time." My father frowned. "We gave you a week. That's plenty of time. I know. I just need to figure out my finances." My mother sighed, exasperated. "This isn't complicated, Ellie. Either you contribute to this family, or you pay your fair share. It's that simple." I bit my tongue, swallowing the words I wanted to say. Instead, I nodded. "I'll let you know by Sunday." They seemed satisfied with that answer, and I escaped to my room before they could press further. Sunday. My move-out date was Saturday. On Friday, I confirmed everything with the moving company. They would arrive at 10 in the morning, right after my parents left for their weekly errands, and Chloe took the girls to a playdate. I had timed it perfectly. That night, I barely slept. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing with 1,000 thoughts. What if something went wrong? What if they came home early? What if I couldn't actually go through with it? But beneath the fear was something else. Excitement. Hope. For the first time in years, I felt like I was taking control of my life. Saturday morning arrived, and I woke up before anyone else. I showered, dressed, and made myself a cup of coffee, savoring the quiet of the house. My parents left at 9:30, and Chloe bundled the girls into her car shortly after. "See you later, Ellie," she called as she walked out the door. I waved, my heart pounding. As soon as her car disappeared down the street, I sprang into action. I pulled the boxes out from under my bed and started carrying them downstairs. The movers arrived exactly on time, and within an hour, everything I owned was loaded into their truck. I stood in my empty room one last time, looking at the bare walls and the stripped bed. This had been my home for 2 years, but it had never really felt like mine. It had always felt like I was living in someone else's space, following someone else's rules. Not anymore. I locked the door behind me and left my key on the kitchen counter. I didn't leave a note. I didn't owe them an explanation. By noon, I was standing in my new studio apartment, surrounded by boxes. The space was tiny, barely bigger than my old bedroom, but it was mine. The walls were white and plain, the floor was scuffed, and the kitchenette consisted of a hot plate and a mini fridge. But I didn't care. I sat on the floor, leaning against the wall, and let out a long breath. I had done it. I had actually done it. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. I spent the rest of the day unpacking. I hung my clothes in the small closet, arranged my books on a makeshift shelf, and set up my bed in the corner. It wasn't much, but it was enough. As the sun began to set, I stood by the window and looked out at the city. Kansas City stretched out before me, full of possibilities. I didn't know what would happen next. I didn't know how my family would react when they realized I was gone, but for the first time in a long time I felt hopeful. I pulled out my phone and saw a notification. My sister had sent a text an hour ago. "Hey, can you watch the girls tomorrow? I have plans." I stared at the message, then deleted it without responding. Tomorrow, they would wake up and find my room empty. They would realize I was gone, and they would have to figure out their own lives without me. I smiled, set my phone down, and got back to unpacking. Sunday morning arrived, and I woke up in my new apartment feeling lighter than I had in years. The sunlight streamed through the small window, casting soft shadows across the bare walls. I stretched, savoring the silence. No crying children, no demanding voices, just peace. I made myself a simple breakfast using the hot plate and the few groceries I had picked up the night before. As I ate, I kept glancing at my phone, half expecting a frantic call or a string of angry messages. But the screen stayed dark. They didn't know yet. I imagined what was happening back at the house. Chloe probably woke up late, stumbling downstairs in her pajamas to find the girls already awake and demanding breakfast. She would call for me, expecting me to appear like I always did. But this time I wouldn't come. She would climb the stairs, knock on my door, and push it open to find the room empty, the bed stripped, the closet bare. And maybe, just maybe, she would realize what she had lost. I smiled at the thought. I spent the morning organizing my new space, rearranging furniture and finding homes for my belongings. It was smiling. Around noon, my phone buzzed. I picked it up and saw a text from Chloe. "Where are you? The girls are driving me crazy. Can you come watch them?" I stared at the message, my heart pounding. I could picture her standing in the kitchen, frustrated and overwhelmed, expecting me to drop everything and rush over. I didn't respond. A few minutes later, another text came through. "Ellie, seriously, where are you? I need help." Still, I didn't reply. Then came a call. I watched as Chloe's name flashed across the screen, the phone vibrating in my hand. I let it ring until it went to voicemail. She called again, and again. I ignored everyone. Finally, a text from my mother appeared. "Ellie, why aren't you answering your sister? She needs you." I set the phone down and went back to unpacking. By late afternoon, the messages had escalated. My mother called 3 times. My father sent a terse text asking where I was. Chloe sent a string of increasingly frantic messages, alternating between pleading and anger. "Ellie, please, I don't know what to do. Where the hell are you? This isn't funny. Call me back. I can't believe you're being this selfish." I read each message with a strange sense of detachment. Part of me felt guilty. They were my family after all. But another part of me, the part that had been used and ignored for so long, felt vindicated. They didn't care about me. They cared about what I could do for them. I turned off my phone and went for a walk. The neighborhood around my new apartment was unfamiliar but welcoming. There were small shops, cafes, and tree-lined streets filled with people going about their lives. I stopped at a coffee shop and ordered a latte, sitting by the window and watching the world go by. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. When I got back to my apartment, I turned my phone back on. The screen lit up with notifications, dozens of missed calls, countless texts. I scrolled through them, my stomach twisting. Most were from Chloe, her messages growing more desperate. "Ellie, please, I'm begging you. I don't know how to do this alone. The girls are crying for you. Mom and Dad are furious. You need to come home. But it was the last message that caught my attention. It was from my father, and it was short and cold. If you don't come back by tonight, don't bother coming back at all. I stared at the message, my hands trembling. This was it. The final ultimatum. The moment where I had to choose between them and myself. I chose myself. I typed a single message and sent it to the family group chat. I moved out. I won't be coming back. I turned off my phone again and set it on the counter. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. I tried to distract myself by watching a movie on my laptop, but I couldn't focus. My mind kept drifting back to my family, to the chaos I had left behind. I wondered if they were angry. I wondered if they were worried. I wondered if they even cared. But more than anything, I wondered if I had made the right choice. As the night grew darker, I climbed into bed and stared at the ceiling. The apartment felt too quiet, almost eerie. I was alone in a way I had never been before, but I wasn't lonely. For the first time in years, I felt free. The next morning, I woke up to silence. No alarms, no crying, no demands, just silence. I stretched, rolled out of bed, and made myself breakfast. As I sat by the window, sipping my coffee and watching the city wake up, I realized something. I didn't miss them. I didn't miss the constant pressure, the endless demands, the feeling of being invisible. I didn't miss being treated like a servant instead of a daughter. I missed my nieces, yes. I missed their laughter and their hugs. But I didn't miss the way my family had used them as a weapon against me. I turned on my phone and braced myself for the onslaught. But to my surprise, there were only a handful of new messages. One from Chloe. You're unbelievable. I hope you're happy. One from my mother. How could you do this to us? And one from my father. Don't expect any help from us ever again. I read each message, then deleted them without responding. They didn't get it. They still thought this was about them. But it wasn't. It was about me. It was about finally choosing my own life over their expectations. I finished my coffee, grabbed my bag, and headed out the door. I had a shift at the bookstore in an hour, and after that, I had a class. My life was just beginning, and I wasn't going to waste another moment looking back. The days that followed my move were a strange mix of relief and anxiety. I threw myself into my routine, focusing on work and school, trying to drown out the lingering guilt that gnawed at the edges of my mind. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was brewing, and my phone stayed mostly silent. Chloe sent a few more bitter messages, but they grew less frequent as the days passed. My parents didn't reach out at all. It was as if I had been erased from their lives, cut out like a bad memory. And honestly, I was okay with that. Or at least, I told myself I was. On Wednesday evening, I was walking home from campus when I ran into an old friend from high school. Her name was Brooke, and we had been close once, before life pulled us in different directions. She was standing outside a coffee shop scrolling through her phone, and she looked up just as I passed by. "Ellie," she said, her face lighting up. "Oh my God, it's been forever." I smiled, surprised to see her. "Brooke, hey, how have you been?" We hugged, and she insisted on buying me a coffee. We sat by the window catching up on the past few years. She told me about her job at a marketing firm, her recent breakup, and her plans to travel to Europe next summer. I told her about school, my job, and my recent move. "Wait, you moved out?" she asked, her eyes widening. "Why didn't you tell me?" I hesitated, unsure how much to share. "It's complicated. My family and I had some issues." She leaned in, her expression sympathetic. "What happened?" I gave her the short version, leaving out the most painful details. She listened intently, nodding along. "That sounds awful," she said when I finished. "But honestly, good for you. It takes guts to walk away from something like that." Her words were comforting, and for the first time since I had left, I felt like someone actually understood. We talked for over an hour, and by the time we said goodbye, I felt lighter. It was nice to be reminded that I had people in my life who cared about me, even if they weren't family, but the relief was short-lived. The next day, I was at work when my phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. I ignored it, assuming it was a spam call. But then it rang again, and again. Finally, I stepped outside and answered. "Hello? Ellie?" The voice on the other end was breathless and panicked. It took me a moment to place it. It was Gregory, Chloe's husband. Gregory, what's going on? Ellie, I need to talk to you. It's about Chloe. My stomach dropped. What about her? He hesitated, then sighed. She's losing it. Ever since you left, she's been a mess. The girls are out of control and she can't handle it. She's been calling me constantly, crying, begging me to come home early from trips. I don't know what to do. I felt a pang of guilt, but I pushed it down. Gregory, that's not my problem. I know, he said quickly. I'm not asking you to come back. I just thought you should know. She's been bad-mouthing you to everyone, saying you abandoned the family. Your parents are backing her up? My jaw tightened. Of course they are. Look, I don't agree with what they did to you, Gregory continued. I told Chloe she was being unreasonable, but she won't listen. She thinks you owe her. I don't owe her anything, I said firmly. I spent a year doing everything for her and she never even said thank you. I know. And for what it's worth, I'm sorry. I should have stepped in sooner. I should have told her to hire a babysitter instead of dumping everything on you. His apology caught me off guard. Why didn't you? He was quiet for a moment. I don't know. I guess I was too busy with work. And honestly, Chloe made it seem like you didn't mind. I almost laughed at that. She was wrong. Yeah, I see that now. We talked for a few more minutes before I ended the call. His words stayed with me for the rest of the day. Chloe was bad-mouthing me. My parents were backing her up. They were painting me as the villain, the selfish daughter who abandoned her family in their time of need. But I wasn't surprised. That's what they did. They twisted the narrative to suit themselves, making me the problem so they didn't have to face their own failures. I refused to let it get to me. I had made my choice, and I wasn't going to second-guess it. That evening, I was sitting in my apartment studying for an exam when I heard a knock on the door. I froze, my heart racing. No one knew where I lived. I hadn't given my address to anyone. I walked to the door and peered through the peephole. My breath caught in my throat. It was Chloe. She stood in the hallway, her arms crossed, her face set in a scowl. Behind her, I could see my mother. My first instinct was to not answer, to pretend I wasn't home and hope they went away. But before I could move, Chloe knocked again, louder this time. Ellie, I know you're in there. Open the door. I took a deep breath, steeling myself, and opened the door. What are you doing here? I asked, my voice cold. Chloe glared at me. What am I doing here? What are you doing here? You just left. No explanation. No warning. Do you have any idea what you've put us through? I sent a message, I said. I told you I moved out. A message, my mother interjected, stepping forward. You call that an explanation? You owe us more than that, Ellie. I don't owe you anything, I said, my voice rising. I paid rent, I did everything you asked, and you still treated me like I was nothing. We gave you a home. My mother snapped. We supported you. You used me. I shot back. You made me your live-in babysitter and then threatened to kick me out when I couldn't do it anymore. That's not support. That's manipulation. Chloe's face twisted with anger. You're so selfish. You have no idea how hard it is to be a mother. And you have no idea how hard it is to be me, I said. I was trying to finish school, work, and raise your kids. Your kids, Chloe, not mine. They're your nieces, she said, her voice breaking. They love you. And you just left them. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I loved my nieces. I did. But I couldn't sacrifice my entire life for them. I'm sorry, I said, my voice softening. But I had to do this. I couldn't keep living like that. My mother shook her head, her expression hard. You're making a mistake, Ellie. You'll regret this. Maybe, I said. But it's my mistake to make. Chloe opened her mouth to say something else. But I stepped back and closed the door in her face. I leaned against the door, my heart pounding, and listened as their footsteps faded down the hallway. They were gone, and I was still standing. The encounter with Chloe and my mother left me shaken, but it also solidified something inside me. I had made the right choice. Seeing them at my door demanding answers and trying to guilt me into coming back only confirmed what I already knew. They didn't care about me. They didn't care about me nout. They cared about what I could do for them. I spent the next few days in a strange state of hyper-awareness. Every time my phone buzzed, I braced myself for another confrontation. Every time I heard footsteps in the hallway, I wondered if it was them coming back. But days turned into a week, and they didn't return. Instead, the texts started. Not from Chloe or my parents, but from extended family members. Aunts, uncles, cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. All of them had heard the story, twisted and distorted, and they all had opinions. Your mother is heartbroken. How could you do this to her? Family is everything. You should be ashamed. You need to apologize and go home. I deleted each message without responding. They didn't know the full story, and I wasn't about to waste my energy explaining it to people who had already made up their minds. But there was one message that stood out. It was from my Aunt Joyce, my mother's older sister. Joyce had always been the black sheep of the family, the one who moved across the country and built a life on her own terms. We weren't close, but I had always respected her. Her message was short and to the point. I heard what happened. Ignore everyone else. You did the right thing. Call me if you need anything. I stared at the message for a long time, feeling a surge of gratitude. It was the first time anyone from my family had acknowledged that I might not be the villain in this story. I saved her number and made a mental note to call her when I had the courage. Meanwhile, I focused on rebuilding my life. I picked up extra shifts at the bookstore, saving every penny I could. I stayed on top of my coursework, determined not to let my personal drama affect my grades. And slowly, I started to feel like myself again. But the real turning point came 2 weeks after I moved out. I was sitting in my apartment one evening scrolling through social media when I came across a post from Chloe. It was a photo of her and the girls at a park smiling for the camera. The caption read, "Just us girls today. Sometimes you have to do everything yourself, Mom. Life's strong, Mom." I stared at the post, my blood boiling. She was painting herself as a martyr, as if she had been doing everything alone all along. But then I scrolled down and saw the comments. One of Chloe's friends had written, "Where's Ellie? Doesn't she usually help with the girls?" Chloe had responded, "She moved out without warning, left us high and dry. But we're managing." Another friend replied, "That's so messed up. Families should stick together." I felt a surge of anger, but I didn't respond. I didn't need to defend myself to strangers on the internet. Instead, I kept scrolling. And that's when I saw it. A post from a mutual friend of Chloe's and mine. Her name was Jessica, and she had posted a screenshot of a conversation she had with Chloe. The conversation was dated from a few months ago, long before I moved out. In it, Chloe was laughing about how she had gotten rid of daycare forever because I would never dare move out. She had written, "Ellie's too scared to leave. She'll do whatever we tell her. It's perfect." I stared at the screenshot, my hands trembling. She had planned this. She had manipulated me, used me, and laughed about it behind my back. And now she was playing the victim. Something inside me snapped. I took a screenshot of the conversation and saved it to my phone. Then I started digging. I went through old text messages looking for every instance where Chloe had taken advantage of me. I found dozens. Texts where she asked me to babysit at the last minute. Texts where she canceled plans with me because she forgot she had other commitments. Texts where she complained about how hard her life was while I was in the middle of finals. I compiled everything into a folder and sat back, staring at the evidence. This was it. This was the proof I needed to show everyone what had really happened. But then I hesitated. Did I really want to do this? Did I want to air our dirty laundry for the world to see? I thought about it for a long time. Part of me wanted to take the high road, to let it go and move on with my life. But another part of me, the part that had been silenced for so long, wanted justice. I wanted people to know the truth. So I made a decision. I opened a new document and started writing. I wrote about everything. The years of being overlooked. The months of being used as free labor. The ultimatum my parents had given me. I wrote about Chloe's manipulation, about the screenshot Jessica had posted, about the way my family had painted me as the villain. I wrote until my hands hurt and my eyes burned. And when I was done, I saved the document and set it aside. I wasn't ready to share it yet. but I would be. The next morning, I woke up to a text from Gregory. Chloe hired a nanny. She's freaking out about the car. But at least the girls are being taken care of. Thought you'd want to know. I smiled. Good. They were finally facing the reality of their situation. I texted back. Thanks for letting me know. He responded a few minutes later. For what it's worth, I think you made the right call. Chloe needed a wake-up call. I didn't respond to that, but his words stayed with me. Maybe I wasn't the villain after all. The following week, I focused entirely on myself. I went to class, worked my shifts, and spent my evenings in my small apartment, enjoying the peace and quiet. For the first time in over a year, I wasn't constantly worrying about someone else's needs. I could study without interruption, sleep without being woken up by crying children, and exist without feeling like I was perpetually on call. It was liberating. But in the back of my mind, I knew this wasn't over. Chloe and my parents hadn't given up. They were just regrouping, figuring out their next move, and I needed to be ready. On Friday morning, I woke up to find that Chloe had posted another photo on social media. This time, it was a picture of the girls at a playground, their faces smudged with ice cream. The caption read, "Doing my best to keep smiling through tough times. Being a single mom isn't easy, but my girls are worth it. Blessed mom, nah, family first." I rolled my eyes. Single mom? Gregory was still very much in the picture, even if he traveled for work. But of course, Chloe had to play the victim. The comment section was filled with sympathy. "You're so strong. Those girls are lucky to have you. Some people just don't understand family loyalty." I knew that last comment was directed at me. I closed the app and went about my day, refusing to let it get under my skin. But later that evening, I received a message from Jessica, the friend who had posted the screenshot. "Hey, Ellie. I just wanted to reach out and say I'm sorry for what you've been going through. I didn't realize how bad things were until I saw that old conversation. Chloe has always been self-centered, but this is a new low." I stared at the message, surprised. Jessica and I had never been particularly close, but her words felt genuine. I typed back, "Thanks. I appreciate that." She responded almost immediately. "If you ever want to talk, I'm here, and for what it's worth, I think you did the right thing." Her support meant more than I had expected. It was a reminder that not everyone believed Chloe's version of events. Over the weekend, I met up with Brooke again. We grabbed lunch at a small cafe near campus, and I told her everything. The screenshot, the messages, the way my family was twisting the narrative. "You need to set the record straight," Brooke said, her eyes blazing with indignation. "They're making you look like the bad guy when they're the ones who treated you like garbage." "I know," I said. "I've been thinking about it." "Well, stop thinking and start doing," she said. "You have the proof. Use it." Her words echoed in my mind for the rest of the day. She was right. I had the evidence. I had the truth. All I had to do was share it. But I needed to be smart about this. I couldn't just post everything online and hope for the best. I needed a plan. That evening, I sat down at my desk and reviewed everything I had compiled. The screenshots, the text messages, the timeline of events. It was all there, laid out in black and white. I drafted a post, carefully wording each sentence to be factual and non-inflammatory. I explained my side of the story, provided the evidence, and made it clear that I wasn't looking for sympathy. I just wanted people to know the truth. I read it over a dozen times, tweaking and refining until it felt right. Then I saved it and closed my laptop. I wasn't ready to post it yet, but I would be soon the next morning. I woke up to a series of missed calls from my mother. I ignored them and went about my day, refusing to let her disrupt my peace. But that evening she showed up at my apartment again. This time she was alone. I opened the door reluctantly, crossing my arms. "What do you want?" She looked older than I remembered, her face lined with stress. "I want to talk." "There's nothing to talk about," I said. "Please, Ellie, just give me 5 minutes." I hesitated, then stepped aside to let her in. She sat on my small couch, looking out of place in the cramped space. I remained standing, leaning against the counter. "I know you're angry," she began, "and I understand why. But you have to see this from our perspective. Chloe is overwhelmed. She needs help, and your family." "I was helping," I said. For over a year, I helped. I gave up my time, my energy, my sanity, and you never once acknowledged it. Instead, you threatened to kick me out. We didn't mean it like that, she said. We just needed you to understand how important this is. No, I said firmly. You needed me to do what you wanted without question, and when I finally stood up for myself, you punished me for it. She was quiet for a moment, then said, "What do you want from us, Ellie?" "I want you to leave me alone," I said. "I want you to stop trying to guilt me into coming back. I want you to accept that I have my own life, and it doesn't revolve around Chloe." She stood up, her expression hardening. "You're being selfish." "Maybe I am," I said, "but I'd rather be selfish than miserable." She left without another word, and I closed the door behind her, my hands shaking. That night, I made my decision. I was done being silent. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of purpose. I reviewed the post I had drafted one final time, making a few last-minute adjustments. Then I took a deep breath and hit publish. The response was immediate. Within an hour, the post had been shared dozens of times. Friends, acquaintances, and even people I didn't know were commenting, offering their support and expressing their outrage at how I had been treated. "I had no idea what you were going through. Your family should be ashamed. You're so brave for speaking out." But not everyone was supportive. Some of Chloe's friends came to her defense, accusing me of airing private family matters and trying to make her look bad. "This is so petty. You're just trying to get attention. Family issues should stay private." I ignored the negative comments and focused on the positive ones. For the first time, people were hearing my side of the story. And they believed me. But the real fallout came that afternoon when Chloe called me. I answered, bracing myself. "How dare you?" she hissed. "How dare you post that? Do you have any idea what you've done?" I told the truth. I said calmly, "That's all." "You've humiliated me," she said, her voice breaking. "Everyone is talking about it. My friends are asking questions. Even Gregory is questioning me." "Good," I said. "Maybe now you'll see how it feels to be judged unfairly." "You're ruining my life," she cried. "No, Chloe, I'm just not letting you ruin mine anymore." She hung up, and I sat there, my heart pounding. I had done it. I had finally stood up to her. Over the next few days, the post continued to spread. More people reached out to me, sharing their own stories of being taken advantage of by family members. It was a reminder that I wasn't alone, that there were others who had faced similar struggles. But the most surprising response came from my Aunt Joyce. She called me one evening, her voice warm and reassuring. "I saw your post," she said. "I'm proud of you, Ellie. It takes courage to stand up for yourself like that." "Thanks, Aunt Joyce," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "You know, your mother and I had a falling out years ago for similar reasons," she said. "She's always been about appearances, about making sure everything looks perfect on the outside. But she never cared about what was happening on the inside." Her words resonated with me. "I didn't know that." "Well, now you do. And I want you to know that you're not alone. If you ever need anything at all, you call me." "Okay." "Okay," I said, tears streaming down my face. After we hung up, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I had lost my immediate family, yes, but I had gained something more valuable, my freedom, and the support of people who truly cared about me. The following week, I received a message from Gregory. He asked if we could meet for coffee, and I agreed, curious about what he had to say. We met at a small cafe near campus. He looked tired, his face drawn. "I wanted to apologize," he said as soon as we sat down. "For everything. I should have stepped in sooner. I should have told Chloe to stop taking advantage of you." "Why didn't you?" I asked. He sighed. "Honestly, I was avoiding the problem. I travel so much for work, and when I'm home, I just want peace. It was easier to let things slide than to confront Chloe." "That's not good enough," I said. "I know," he said, "and I'm sorry. For what it's worth, I've told Chloe that she needs to hire help. We can afford it. She just didn't want to spend the money." I shook my head. "Of course she didn't. She's been spiraling since you left," he continued. "The nanny helps, but Chloe is struggling to adjust. She never realized how much you were doing." "That's not my problem," I said. I know, he said, but I thought you should know, and I wanted to thank you, actually. Thank me? I asked, surprised. Yeah, you standing up for yourself forced us to face reality. Chloe is finally taking responsibility for her own life. It's been hard, but I think it's necessary. I didn't know how to respond to that. Part of me was glad that my leaving had forced change, but another part of me was still angry at how long it had taken for anyone to acknowledge my pain. We talked for a while longer, and by the time we parted ways, I felt a sense of closure. Gregory wasn't perfect, but at least he was trying. That evening, I sat in my apartment and reflected on everything that had happened. I had lost my family, yes, but I had gained something more important: myself. I was no longer the girl who sacrificed everything for people who didn't appreciate her. I was someone who stood up for what she deserved, and that was worth more than any family approval. Life settled into a new rhythm after that. I continued working at the bookstore, picking up extra shifts whenever I could. My classes kept me busy, and I found myself genuinely enjoying the work without the constant weight of obligation dragging me down. My grades improved, my stress levels dropped, and for the first time in years, I felt like I was actually living instead of just surviving. One morning, about a month after I moved out, I was sitting in a coffee shop near campus, working on an essay, when my phone buzzed with a notification. It was a message from Jessica. Hey, just wanted to give you a heads up. Chloe's posting about you again, thought you should know. I sighed and opened the app. Sure enough, there was a new post from Chloe. But this time, it wasn't a photo of the girls, or a cryptic caption about being a strong mom. It was a long, rambling rant. Some people will never understand what it means to be family. They'll take, and then leave you when you need them most. But karma has a way of catching up with selfish people. Just remember, the truth always comes out in the end. The comments were divided. Some people supported her, while others called her out for being vague and passive-aggressive. A few even mentioned my post, pointing out that I had provided receipts while she was just making accusations. I closed the app and went back to my essay. I had said my piece. I wasn't going to engage in a back and forth with her. But later that evening, I received a call from an unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. Hello? Ellie, it's Dorothy, your landlord. Oh, hi, Dorothy. Is everything okay? Yes, everything's fine. I just wanted to check in and see how you're settling in. I'm doing great, actually. The apartment is perfect. I'm glad to hear that, she said. You know, I had a feeling about you when we first met. You seemed like someone who was ready to start fresh. Her words caught me off guard. Thank you. That means a lot. We chatted for a few more minutes, and after we hung up, I felt a renewed sense of gratitude. I had taken a huge risk moving out, but it had been worth it. As the weeks passed, my family's attempts to contact me dwindled. Chloe stopped posting about me. My parents stopped calling. It was as if they had finally accepted that I wasn't coming back, and I was okay with that. One Saturday afternoon, I was walking through a farmer's market when I ran into Brooke. She was carrying a basket full of fresh produce, her face lighting up when she saw me. Ellie, perfect timing. Want to grab lunch? We found a small food truck and sat at a picnic table, eating tacos and catching up. Brooke told me about her recent promotion at work, and I told her about my improving grades. You seem different, she said, studying me. Happier. I am, I said. I didn't realize how much that situation was dragging me down until I got out of it. She smiled. I'm proud of you, seriously. It takes guts to walk away from family. Thanks, I said. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. As we finished our lunch, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. I had made the right choice, and I was finally starting to see the rewards. That evening, I received a text from Aunt Joyce just thinking about you. Hope you're doing well. Remember, you always have a place to stay if you ever need it. I smiled and texted back. Thanks, Aunt Joyce. I'm doing great. A few months later, I received one final message from Chloe. It was short and bitter. I hope you're happy. You got what you wanted. We're struggling over here, but I guess that doesn't matter to you. I stared at the message for a long time, then deleted it without responding. She still didn't get it, She still thought this was about punishing her, but it wasn't. It was about saving myself. Chloe's life spiraled after I left. The nanny she hired quit after 3 weeks, unable to deal with her constant demands and lack of respect. She cycled through 2 more before finally finding one who stuck around, but only because she was being paid well above market rate. The cost of childcare ate into her budget, forcing her to cut back on the luxuries she had once taken for granted. Her social media presence shifted from curated perfection to barely concealed frustration. Friends stopped commenting on her posts, and invitations to events dried up. Gregory, tired of her refusal to take responsibility, spent even more time traveling, leaving her to manage everything on her own. My parents fared no better. Their relationship with Chloe became strained as they realized the extent of her manipulation. They were forced to step in to help with the girls more often, cutting into their own social lives. Their friends began to whisper about the family drama, and my mother's carefully cultivated image of a perfect family crumbled. My father, always concerned about appearances, withdrew into silence, unable to face the reality that his favoritism had driven his younger daughter away. As for me, I woke up each morning in my small apartment with a sense of freedom I had never known. I finished my degree with honors, landed a full-time job in my field, and moved into a better apartment a year later. I built a life on my own terms, surrounded by people who valued me for who I was, not what I could do for them. Sometimes, late at night, I thought about my nieces. I missed them, but I knew that loving them didn't mean sacrificing my entire future. And maybe someday, when they were older, they would understand why their aunt had to leave. Looking back on everything, I didn't regret my decision. Walking away from my family had been the hardest thing I had ever done, but it had also been the most necessary. I had spent years bending to their demands, and in doing so, I had lost myself. Now, I was free to become the person I was always meant to be, and that was worth more than any amount of guilt they tried to place on me.